This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented by Clutch Points. Like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It's Apple, Spotify, and of course YouTube. Rate us, review us, all that other fun stuff, or else I'm forced to ask the question, are we even really friends? I'm just playing. But my name is Sheldon Alexander. Thank you for tuning in once again to this, the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, where I believe the last time you heard our voices on this feed, we were talking about the Super Bowl, and hopefully you listened to the pod and followed the picks because the Seattle Seahawks were just dominant. That means you won, and we like that. That's what we do on the pod. So after a successful betting season on the NFL, we are back, of course, to talk more football. But, we do these little pop-up episodes every once in a while during the offseason. Maybe there might be more on the way, maybe some other sports. If that's the case, let us know in the comments. You want us to talk some NBA basketball, maybe some NCAA basketball. Let us know. We got that. We could do that. Let us know in the comments. But anyways, as of right now, we're here to discuss the NFL draft. This, my friends, is an NFL draft, but through the lens of a betting preview. Today, we're breaking down the NFL draft, focusing specifically on the odds, what they're telling us so far. We're talking about the draft order in the 2026 NFL draft. The odds of who's going to be the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. Will break down the top 5 prospects. Like, if something were to happen, if there were a shakeup at the top of the draft and there's a trade, maybe who are some of the other guys that could end up going number 1? We'll talk about where things get really interesting at number 2. And let's be honest, there's going to be a lot of focus on the Las Vegas Raiders, who currently have the number 1 overall pick. And, there's been a lot going on with the Raiders. Are they going to stay there? Are they going to take Fernando Mendoza? That's the assumption. But there's also just been a lot going on with the whole Maxx Crosby stuff. We'll break that all down. But let's get to the draft, right? Because this is what we're here for. This is what we're going to talk about. 2026 NFL draft preview. So let's start here. The order of the NFL draft as of right now. At the number 1 spot, you got the Las Vegas Raiders. At the number 2 spot, you got the New York Jets. Number 3, you got the Arizona Cardinals. Number 4, the Tennessee Titans. Number 5, you got the New York Giants. And right away, this sets up the entire betting market because the Raiders at number 1, they got a big decision to make at quarterback. And they made a move already. They got rid of Geno Smith. So that tells you, okay, they need a quarterback in the room, we'll say. We'll put it that way, right? But at number 2, the Jets, could be where the flexibility comes in, could be where the chaos comes in, because who knows what the Jets are ever really doing. I mean, the Jets don't even really know what they're doing, right? But as mentioned, from a betting preview, right? Number 1 overall pick. Let's see what's going on here, okay? So if we focus in on the odds, bring up one of the apps that you're used to following. We'll get to one of those soon. But let's focus on the odds. And we remove the players not entering the draft. Here are the top 5 prospects. Let's say we're doing a consensus here, right? Based on the current betting and draft momentum. So you got Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana at minus 8,000, okay, to be the number 1 overall pick. Ruben Bain Jr. at plus 4,500. Avril Reese at plus 6,000, Ty Simpson at plus 9,000, Jordan Tyson at plus 10,000. Okay, so obviously Mendoza at minus 8,000. That's like an implied probability of about 98 to 99%, right? So we get it. That's where the Raiders are looking. There's not really much there going on, right, in terms from a betting perspective, but the books are kind of telling you here, this pick might be pretty much decided, right? But if we break down each of the guys, and hey, listen, it's the Raiders, it's the NFL draft. A lot of things could still happen before then, right? A lot of things could still break down. So you never know if a trade's going to happen. You never know what else is in the mix. So it's good to know a little bit about each of the prospects, because depending on who might want to jump up, some of these other guys might be viable for the number 1 overall pick. But let's break down some of these prospects, right? So you got Fernando Mendoza, obviously the quarterback out of Indiana, Heisman Trophy winner. He won the national championship, threw for over 3,500 yards, 40 plus touchdowns, great production. He was a clear, if you're looking at this draft, right? Most people will tell you he's a clear franchise QB in this class. Okay. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Makes sense. Ruben Bain Jr. is an edge out of Miami, 9.5 sacks last year, elite pass rusher, only real defensive player with legit number one odds, right? And I think for him, he is so good that even at the number 2 pick, or even if you're not getting Mendoza, but like your need is defense, we know that edge rushers are super, super important in the NFL. I mean, we're going to talk about Maxx Crosby later, right? So we'll break that down. Avril Reese, who's a linebacker slash edge out of Ohio State, versatile defender, obviously can rush or play off the ball, widely viewed as a top 2 overall talent. So again, there's some work there depending on what's going on. Do the Jets trade out? Do another team move up? Who do they like better? Is it going to be Ruben Bain Jr.? Is it going to be Avril Reese? Interesting stuff. Then we go to number 4 on our list here, and we got Ty Simpson, strong arm QB out of Alabama. Strong arm, developmental upside, backup QB option if something goes wrong. I'm not really sure how much I like Ty Simpson, in college football, but you know, we get it. It's Alabama. You're on a national stage. He's all right, but I'm not sure if I'm banking on it that much. I'll put it that way politely. Next up, we'll go to Jordan Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State, explosive playmaker, super long shot for being the number 1 overall pick, but more relevant for the top 5 than he is for number 1 overall pick. So that's super interesting there, right? And I also think that we know the number 1 pick is super wrapped up already, but there are odds that you can find where you're talking about, will this person be a top 5 pick? And those things get a little murky because, again, there's always trade talk about who could trade up. And if they're trading up, there could be trading up for a specific need. So then that could be, do I need a defensive stud like Ruben Bain Jr.? Do I need, Arizona State wide receiver who is making big time plays in Jordan Tyson? Do I just have a quarterback that I identify as my personal need that I want? Think about what happened with Bo Nix, right? Bo Nix wasn't supposed to go where he went, but Sean Payton liked him. They traded up. Boom. So that's why it's interesting. And it's almost, this is like a precursor for when the draft talk really starts to heat up. So we're just trying to get you familiar with where some of the odds lay with some of these guys, and also where we see some of them may be able to go. Let's do a little deeper of a dive here on why Fernando Mendoza is such a heavy favorite to be the number 1 overall pick going to the Las Vegas Raiders, right? So, as mentioned, Indiana Hoosiers football, he was really, really good. I mean, taking them to the national championship, we saw that. You saw the play that he made. Like, he's a winner. And I know that that's an intangible that gets tossed around a lot, but I just feel like when you watched him play, they were so dominant for most of the season, but then you put them up against big time defenses, and my guy's still out there making plays. I mean, his run for the touchdown in the national championship game, like that's going to live forever, right? That's going to be on his forever highlight tape. But to take home the Heisman, to win the national championship, that is one of the more dominant performances we've seen from a quarterback, one of the best quarterback seasons we've seen in years in the NCAA. And I think we have to mention that, despite maybe, his highlights might not jump off the screen at you as much as some other number 1 overall picks or, other dominating college football seasons. Like, he had a really good year, but I don't think it's being talked about in the same way as some of the other QBs that we've seen in the past. But in terms of his strength, elite arm talent, mobility, he can extend plays. He has an aggressive downfield mindset, proven winner, obviously, but with the offense that they had, they were super aggressive at all times. And I think, when you enter the NFL under that guise of always trying to make plays, that's a good thing. You can't just call him a system QB. Weaknesses, though. risk-taking decisions, can force throws, still refining timing. That's all stuff that, you can work with. And that's also the reminder of someone who is a rookie that is coming in and will need to develop. And hey, one of the owners just happens to be a pretty good QB who, I know my guy was playing flag football over the weekend, but he's a pretty good QB in Tom Brady who might have, some wise words on how to help develop a QB that came into the NFL. And, talking about someone who surpassed expectations, that's your man's Tom Brady, right? So let's keep this going, though. Let's keep this going because as I look at this now, let's see what else we got here. This fit with the Raiders. So the Raiders need a QB, right? They're in dire need of a QB, let's be honest. But they also got a new coach who is coming from, fresh off a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. And it's a new coach, new system. Mendoza, right there just makes too much sense. If you get a read on this guy and he's a guy that fits your system, he has the makeup and the mentality of someone you want to lead your organization going forward, it just seems to make sense. And for all intents and purposes, Mendoza seems to be a good kid. And that's why he's such an overall favorite to, be the number one overall pick. Now, can he make an immediate impact? It's tough, right? I think with most rookie QBs, you're going to expect inconsistency early, but you're hoping in the long-term development. And I think with a brand new coach, Brady trying to stabilize some things, you got a quarterback, they made some moves, bringing in offensive linemen. I think you're trying to put him in a better position to succeed than, let's say, if he came into the Raiders last year, where there was a bit of chaos going on there. But so much talk about Mendoza, so much talk about the number one pick, and rightfully so. But that almost leads us to where the number two pick, and where some interesting betting odds could come up with the number two pick. But before we get to the number two pick, got a little message for you. All right. Hold on. Before we get to this next draft prospect, I need you to do something real quick. Pull out your phone. I'm serious. Go download Novig and punch in code CPPicks. Do it right now while I'll explain why. We sit here each and every week and we talk about our picks. That hot take is so crazy. There's no way he gets drafted that high. That's what you're thinking, right? Well, on Novig, you can actually do something about it. It's not a sports book. It's a sports exchange. Compare their odds to the sports books and you'll be blown away. Plus, you're not playing against a house. You're playing against other people. On Novig, you can take the best available odds, or if you're feeling confident, offer your own odds to the market and let other participants trade against you. It's strategy meets sports, and it's way more interactive than the usual setup. They've got markets across the board: NBA, NFL, MLB, college hoops, football, UFC, soccer, golf, tennis, and even esports. Basically, if it's on your screen, it's on Novig. So yeah, if you missed that earlier, go to Novig, enter code CPPicks, spend $5 and get $50 in Novig coins. Must be 21 and older. Responsible gameplay. Download Novig. Trade the game your way. You must be 21 or older to sign up and play. And as always, responsible gameplay. Now, let's get into it. So let's get back to talking about the NFL draft from a betting standpoint. And as teased before the break here, let's talk about where some real value might be coming into play here. And that's with the number 2 pick overall in the draft. And currently the New York Jets are there, and it's wide open because it's the Jets. And who knows what the Jets are really ever up to. But the point remains here. It's wide open, and we like that. We like that. So currently, number 2 pick odds. We got Avril Reese, who's around, he's a favorite, but it's around minus 170 right now. And David Bailey, plus 200. Ruben Bain Jr., plus 1,000. Now, this matters because if Mendoza goes number 1, it means the draft really starts at number 2 for the Jets, right? Defense is what we've seen them mostly look at as of late. Aaron Glenn, we know, is a defensive coach. He's our head coach. So Reese or Bain makes sense. Immediate impact player. You're hoping to put them in and elevate your defense, which at times looked okay, but then there's just so much chaos with that team that it's tough to sustain consistency, and be actually good. But you're hoping you can build a pass rush premium, right? David Bailey, we mentioned, huge sack production season last year. And, you know, sacks are key. That's a huge part of defense. You could argue that pass rushing might be the second most important position after your quarterback. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could make the argument. I'd listen to the argument. And I know there's other positions that make more money, and I get all that. I do understand that. But I'm talking from a game breaker perspective. There's very few teams that win without an effective pass rush. So I understand where the Jets could be going with this. Now, there's a third scenario here that would just lead to absolute chaos. And that would be the Jets trading down, because there's a team that wants to trade up to maybe get a QB or maybe another position, or maybe they want a defensive player that much more, or maybe it's just asset management from the Jets where, hey, listen, you got the number 2 pick. Maybe you're able to trade down, get some other assets on top of that, because the Jets got a lot of holes to fill. So if you traded down and were able to get 2 firsts and then go forward and make some picks, cool. Maybe there's someone you have your eye on a little later and that works, and you can pick up 2 guys. That works perfectly, right? So the thing so far, looking at this, the number 1 pick, there's not really much value there, but the sharp bettors are looking at the number 2 overall pick and what could go down there. And I really think that's super interesting, because you either have the craziness of someone trading up, and then it becomes important in terms of who that team is, what position of need they're trading up for, or what's a defensive player that jumps off the screen that someone just has to have. Now, the crazy part, speaking of defensive players, the Maxx Crosby situation is super interesting here, because Maxx Crosby, Maxx Crosby was a lone bright spot in what was a 3-14 season for the Raiders last year. And the Raiders, they changed their coach. They're trying to get a roster reset, a QB reset. Their new coach, obviously, as mentioned, he's coming from, winning the Super Bowl as a offensive coordinator with the Seattle Seahawks. So there's a long-term plan there where you're trying to build your offense, build a quarterback, build some stability. Does Maxx Crosby fit that same timeline? I don't know. How much are you expecting Mendoza to win right away? I don't know. Here's what I do know, okay? Maxx Crosby got traded to Baltimore, and then he reportedly failed his physical. Now, there's some shenanigans that a lot of people are calling there, because obviously any team that was trading for Maxx Crosby was fully aware of his situation, coming off of surgery and knowing that he'd be rehabbing and would be back for the start of the season, but obviously currently would be banged up and he currently would fail a physical. But, if you've been following that story, you know what happened. The Ravens end up getting Trey Hendrickson instead, and then Maxx Crosby fails his physical. There's a lot going on there that would be good for a whole other podcast discussion that doesn't really have to do with the NFL betting preview. But the point is, the Raiders tried to move their best defensive player, which looked like, okay, cool, we're trying to rebuild our team here, and then deal collapses. So what's happening now, right? They considered blowing it up, but now are you going to end up trying to be competitive? Are you going to keep Maxx Crosby? Are you going to trade him for more draft capital that you could potentially add to Mendoza? Because remember, in that deal, they were going to get 2 first-round picks. They were going to get a first-round pick. And I think that if you were able to secure that, you're making moves here if you're the Raiders. You're really making moves. So their whole off season, it's interesting. I'm interested to see how this all plays out. Does this change anything here? Does this affect Mendoza? Does this affect just what their whole thought process was heading into this whole thing, right? Because Obviously, with Mendoza, with your new coach, you're looking long term. But with Maxx Crosby, you're looking at the here and now. And do you keep him? Is there someone else in the draft that wants to trade up? How much did the whole quote unquote failing physical impact Maxx Crosby's value in terms of what you'd be able to get? If you were getting 2 firsts for him before, what does that become now? Is that even enough for you to trade Maxx Crosby? Is there someone else that you had your eye on that you were willing to take if you got those extra picks? There's so much there and so much that could impact the rest of this draft. And, with time before the draft comes up, there's a lot of things that could change here, right? But overall, I think if you're the Raiders, you stay the course, you draft Mendoza, you stick to your plan of you're rebuilding your team, right? And you're not trying to rush the process at all. If a deal does pop up for Maxx Crosby that has him, giving you back some value, it might not be what you were going to get from the Ravens, but if it's somewhat close, I think you still do it because you have other holes on your team that you need to fill. And Maxx Crosby, that's a good asset to be able to get rid of, to move on from at the point in his career where you don't know how much more banged up he's going to get. You might not have more opportunities to be able to secure a first round pick for Maxx Crosby. So I would really consider still moving him. If I could get another first in this draft, I do it because that helps my pieces going forward. But their offseason moves, right? That also is going to impact their cap because Maxx Crosby makes a lot of money. But your roster's reshaped. You got a new face of the franchise coming in, hopefully in Mendoza. Let's see what's going on, though, because there's still some time. Could they trade down? In theory, yes. But, I don't think they're going to trade down. Mendoza is their pick. That's what's going to happen. If you're the Las Vegas Raiders, you take Fernando Mendoza. There's no debate. There's no trade. There's no overthinking. He's the best QB in the draft. You need a QB. It's good timing. You got a new offensive-minded coach. He matches just with the program that you're on right now and what you're trying to build. He's a good kid, which I think matters a lot, right? In terms of someone who you want to put your franchise in the hands of. And I think that stuff matters. I think that stuff matters for sure. So this is one of the most locked in number 1 overall picks that we've seen in a long time. And I wonder, I guess it just emphasizes the fact that what you need to really be focusing on maybe is attacking the number 2 pick overall in the draft. I just think that's what you got to look at because there's no real value there unless a trade happens. But even still, I think someone would be trading up to get Mendoza. So the number 2 pick is where there's going to be some value there for you. Do your research, look into it, follow what the Jets are doing, and I know it's a Jets, so it's kind of really crazy, but watch for late trade movement and watch what the Jets are doing. Focus on the number 2 pick. That's the betting advice that I'm going to come with and give y'all on this pod because I think that's really what needs to be done here if you are looking to make some money here on the NFL draft. And the NFL draft is a great place to look for betting opportunities, value, as we like to say. So again, thank you for tuning into this pod. Hopefully, you found a little inkling there. You got a little insight on who the Jets should take at number 2. And that's really what you need to be focusing on in this NFL draft because the number 1 pick is decided. The only thing you got to make sure and pay attention to is, are the Raiders going to hang on to the pick? All signs point to yes. So that means the value in this draft is looking into the number 2 pick and trying to figure out what the Jets are going to do, which, Jets have a long history of wildness, so chaos could ensue. But thank you for tuning in to this Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander. You can find me online on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. Don't forget to follow the podcast, Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. That's Apple, that's Spotify, of course, that's YouTube. Like, follow, and subscribe there to get all the goodness that we have to offer. And if you want more from the Clutch Picks Betting Pod during the offseason. Maybe you want more football stuff. Maybe you want, more stuff on NBA basketball betting. WNBA is about to start. March Madness is in full swing. If you want any of that content, hit up the people at Clutch Points. Let them know. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. As always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.